Leftover Man, a continuing serial of the hapless sleuth and deuce detective Johnny Dime, the poet of crime. An episode entitled The Leftover Man. A war was going on. A spider had a moth wrapped up for dinner. It flapped pale wings to put off the feast. It grew weaker at last, ready for sleep. I was awake. Stars shone in my window. A new moon hid herself in black velvet. Constellations formed, horses and a head of Elvis. I should have laid off the rum and codeine. Outside, Shepherdstown slept. Its history tossed and turned. So did the woman with red hair. She snored like a 4-H finalist, freckled, skinny dipping in a dream. My neon nightlight showed her feet drawn up demurely. I sat on the bed, drank, and tried to remember her name. I was Dime, had that much to go on. The rum was Ronrico. The room was furnished from Goodwill with dust bunnies and depression glass. I lit a candle at one end and looked around. The woman twisted in her sleep, but I was no chubby checker, and this was a hard way to make a living. Private eye, bloodshot and bald. Yeah, she wore my pajama pants, Snow White of the slums. In the soft light, I opened my diary and read about Boy Scouts. We had spoons on our penknives and camped out. Girls couldn't go. Bears wouldn't come if we lay still. My diary stopped when I was 14. Now I was 3 times that old and felt half as good. I fished in the nightstand for a pen, came up with a thermometer. Back in the drawer, a box of cough drops looked on. Smith Brothers. Weren't they at Woodstock? Yeah. Now what's her name? Began with a J, like mine. Met her at the Yellow Brick Bank. Began with a J. Ah, Janie! Janie Valentine. Da-da-da-da. Seventh, poem number 1. This poem is entitled Saving Faith. I thought no one, dear, was like you, but your face haunts everyone I see. Poem number 2, for a dancer. She was dark, wore heels, and danced to Django. Her partners swung her close and far, a neat package. One caught sight of a breathless little face, smiling. Years later, in a home all by herself, she died. They wrapped her, a widow, in the wallpaper she loathed. Furthermore, the music stopped. This happens to the best dancers. Too bad that they have to sit this one out. Poem number 3. Elegy for a Star. He traveled the hate as a camel once traveled the smoke, high on forever, 68. Among girls flowering, he lay low, longing to be like Dad, man tall. Was willing, in fact, to be loved by all that summer, the next century. But one day he went to town unarmed, lost in reflection, beautiful. And there came at last into his own. Night had been another country. Now he woke, an acid taste in the mouth, an antique tongue to match the other heirlooms. These were his body now. Time-pressed rose from the family Bible. He was alone and knew how liable stars are to become dwarves, to be born again with a cowl of space at the heart of our galaxy. So, with a will, he went nova, blew up like a Joplin vowel, and was still. He traveled the hate as a camel once traveled the smoke, high on forever, 68. Poem number 4, Wine Drunk. Wine drunk from crystal we kissed, you asking first politely of me love, and yes continues to be our answer. Poem number 5. Timing Belt, a true story. The timing belt goes, snaps, the car is towed to a shop off the highway, hours it will take to replace, near Newmarket, Maryland. Young horses stand looking at me, image of man thrown on the backs of eyes. They pause, 6 colts led by 2 beauties. They stare between nibbles and short loops. The equine heads turn or dip as their souls decide. Legs move them in circles of joy where the sun is proud. Nerves fuel part of this power to behold new animals. Still, the leaders look to me. Does he have sugar? A whip? Will he try to ride us? They step a little closer. Apple memories. Around the fall field leaves refract. The light is ours. Weeds still offer mouths green chewing. Flames of October rise or crackle underfoot. Now, as if signaled, colts run, all slender engines. I've never wanted anything enough. Just as these young don't want the apple enough to break stride or risk the hand near fences, man is just another tree moving in the sky. Poem number 6, Sloth's Dream. In heaven, God herself greets one arriving, says to him, "Go down again, come up, go down, soul, over and over. This bungee fate is justice for a lazy life." So the man's thinking, well, I'm wholly having these conferences with God. She shakes her head, reminds him, you have homework. Poem number 7, Last Reading, for Ushi. Also, rather a true story about an aging poet who hopes for groupies but finds instead kindred spirits of the male persuasion. Last Reading, for Ushi. Sebastian, poet rake, reads now. Verse and music marry in the bookshop between shelves of used rapture and dust. Collages of flesh move skirts full of summer, coffee cups and folding chairs. Rose bloom in a block of ice. But as Sebastian hits his stride, a girl stands up, jeans tight, and turns to browse in fiction. Now, must she? Thinks Sebastian, reaching his best parts, pulp, odes, and yawps of yesteryear. Soul of Nam Pin was under my skin. Our lips traveled light till pity fled, fuse and flame like Madame News, our bed burned to bone. But Sebastian feels a wave recede, the women coolly fade on the arm of evening. Wind from the sea, a breath, his tongue is sand in search of tides, spent shells are words the kestels drop. One woman stays, his wife, asleep. In rocking chair she dreams the sea-throned lifeguard, god of waves, Sebastian. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, Sebastian whispers, one poem more is left. For here the men stay on, circle around fire. They want weather for tomorrow's hunt, words to wake desire. They are old men and young, spears in mortal hands. The eyes of the men are cameras.